Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you lads and ladies around the world, and welcome back to a once again flourishing Egypt, complete with wealth, dominance, smashy, all of the good stuff you're familiar with. Where today we're starting off with the beginning of Egypt's 19th royal dynasty, the dynasty of which holds some of the most famous pharaohs in all of history, with the likes of Seti I, Ramesses the Great, and Ramesses III. And it's under this dynasty Egypt would see perhaps its final golden age. But as for final golden ages, that is a tale for another time, so let's move swiftly on to 1292 BC! None of that's happening yet, don't worry about it. Just ignore the pirates on the Aegean Sea, they'll go away eventually. So like I said, it's now 1292 BC and Horemheb has now put down his hammer and chisel, having luckily missed some of Akhenaten's stuff so that we could one day find it. And it's interesting to note that Ramesses I, when he ascended to the throne, was not a relative of Horemheb's at all. In fact, Horemheb was the final pharaoh of the 18th royal dynasty of Egyptian pharaohs. So where exactly does Ramesses come from? Well, according to the records we have, Ramesses, as he was known at birth, was born to a noble military family based at Avaris in the Nile Delta, a city of which, if you've read the story of Ramesses and Amenhotep, will be somewhat familiar to you. From this noble birth, however, it appears that Ramesses I had friends in high places, with him having some relationship with the viceroy at the time of the Egyptian region of Kush. Yes, that very same rebellious region in the far south of Egypt's empire, which at the time was a military post of very high note. And it's from here that Ramesses, as he was known at the time, attracted the attention of the then pharaoh Horemheb, who, seeing as he had no surviving children, appointed Ramesses to be his successor, seeing as he had demonstrated his able abilities as an administrator and already held a position as the high priest of the cult of Set. Moreover, the succession of this new candidate was already confirmed, with Ramesses I already having a son, him being Seti I, and a grandson, the later Ramesses II or Ramesses the Great, as he is now known. And upon taking the throne in 1292 BC, Ramesses changed his name to Ramesses, which literally translates as Ra bore him, and claiming to be the descendant of the literal god of the sun, no one is going to be challenging you anytime soon in a society as superstitious as ones in the late Bronze Age. And so with that, let's get on to the deeds and happenings of the reign of Ramesses I. Oh my gods, he's already dead. What? Wow, that was quick. Okay, so the end of the reign of Ramesses I was slated to be the year 1290 BC, and despite the supposed 2-year timestamp, it's now been estimated that the reign of Ramesses I lasted no longer than approximately 17 months. It appears then that Ramesses I may already have been an elderly gent upon taking the throne, same as Pharaoh I. And so, in 1290 BC, his son, Seti I, takes the throne. And Seti I was a man with a plan to retake all of the territories lost to the Hittites due to the bungling up of everything by Akhenaten. For you see, under the reigns of the final 4 pharaohs of the 18th dynasty of Egypt, foreign policy took somewhat of a back foot. Akhenaten had neglected Egypt's territories in Syria and the Levant, leaving them extremely vulnerable to capture and invasion by the Hittite Empire, an empire based mainly in Anatolia around the great city of Hattusa. As a result, Egypt now only held a strong grip in the north in territories only stretching just beyond the edges of the Sinai Peninsula, with the territories the Hittites just couldn't reach now being sown with disorder from the Egyptian point of view. And so Seti I gathered his armies and went on the march. Reaching the area then known as Canaan, Seti I faced a group of Bedouins in battle known as the Shasu, against whom he was victorious. But then again, like I've said before, in the long term, the Bedouins still exist today, and pharaohs don't. So who really wins? For now in the late Bronze Age, however, this victory enabled Seti I to reconsolidate Egypt's stronghold over the region then known as Canaan, and also reaffirm control over the areas around the Sinai Peninsula, therefore securing Egypt's northernmost territories. But this was not the end of Seti I's military campaigns, for Egypt was now experiencing the pressure from a brand new enemy, this time in the northwest of Egypt's territories, known as the Libyans, who at this time consisted of a band of tribes who over the next 100 to 150 years would be a constant problem upon Egypt's westernmost borders. But for now though, it's okay. Seti I was able to put them down and keep them from causing any major damage on Egypt's westernmost borders. So of course, no need to worry about them, they're not going to be a problem, they're not going to be a problem anytime soon, they'll never be a problem for Egypt again, and the Egyptian Empire will never fall. So there you go, that's the Libyans taken care of. But this wasn't the only problem Seti I faced, because once more, the troublesome region of Nubia reared its head. But this was only a minor rebellion, a rebellion that Seti I was able to put down with relative ease. But all of these great military victories and successes had not gone unnoticed. For now, it appears that the Hittite Empire has started throwing the Egyptian Empire some mean looks, resulting in a clash between the two at the city of Kadesh. A city that had once been a key outpost for the Egyptian Empire, thanks to the reign of Akhenaten, had fallen to the Hittites years before, and there had been attempts under the reigns of pharaohs Tutankhamun, I and Horemheb to retake this city-state, yet all of them thus far had failed catastrophically, resulting in the continued control of Kadesh by the Hittite Empire. But this, it appears, did not discourage old Seti I, for he cracked his knuckles and led his army in an attack on the city, taking a Hittite empire that had held the city completely by surprise and smashing them on the battlefield, resulting in the entrance to the city of Kadesh in triumph, with Seti I and his son, the later Ramesses II, entering the city victorious. As a result, Seti I built a stele within the city, marking his victory and therefore reclaiming the city of Kadesh for Egypt. Unfortunately though, this city would not remain Egyptian for long, for the Hittites would once again recapture Kadesh and hold it. And in fact, this city would go on to change hands between the Egyptian and Hittite empires multiple times across the remainder of the existence of these two empires. And with military successes come domestic successes, and with that we'll move on to the domestic successes and policies of Seti I. With the foundations for yet another golden age laid by Pharaoh Horemheb, Seti I took these foundations and kicked them into high gear. He opened quarries and mines across across Egypt's territories, only adding to the now growing wealth of the Egyptian Empire. Temples and shrines that had fallen into decay were restored, rebuilt, or reconstructed. So to the uninformed viewer, it looked like the Golden Age from the time of Thutmose and Hatshepsut had never come to an end. Seti even went as far as to build a brand new memorial temple at Abydos, dedicated mainly to the god Osiris alongside 6 other Egyptian deities. And once again, following tradition, Seti I added another construction to the temple site at Karnak. However, Seti I added a construction far more lavish perhaps than any of his predecessors had added to the site, for he extensively renovated the Great Hypostyle Hall, one of the main features that still exist at the temple site at Karnak to this very day. Some of the reliefs depicting the gods built under Seti I, I might add, are so well preserved that some of them even maintain some of the colour they were crafted with thousands of years before. And it appears that under the reign of Seti I, the grand project of bringing Egypt back to its golden age, initiated under Horemheb, was at last completed, with the Egyptian Empire's prestige once again restored on the battlefield against the Hittite Empire, with its economy once again booming and absolutely swimming in its own wealth, prosperity and gold reserves. And with that we come to the year 1279 BC and the death of Seti I. And no, it wasn't by his high priest Imhotep and his mistress Anck-su-namun. Yes, I know, it's disappointing. Damn, I love that film. Moving on, however, it's quite important to note that it appears that Egypt's wealth under the reign of Seti I was reflected in his tomb. It's been noted that Seti I possesses perhaps the most lavish tomb out of all of the pharaohs buried within the Valley of the Kings, which only points to just how wealthy Egypt was by the year 1279 BC. And yet this golden age, this glory, this impressiveness does not stop here. So join us next time for the tale of perhaps the most well-known and famous Egyptian pharaoh of all time, Ramesses II, or as he is otherwise known, Ramesses the Great. So if you enjoyed this video, perhaps consider leaving a like and maybe subscribe so that you don't miss out on any further uploads concerning the history of our world and its cultural happenings as part of the Grand Portfolio. For now though, I'm Lewis of the Grand Portfolio, and thank you for watching.